So Connor McDavid did the thing, and the Predators lose again in overtime. On today's Locked On Predators podcast, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we're going to play some takes from a hat.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this, y'all. We made it to Friday episode with a welcome to any first-time listeners, and of course, a shout out to our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers. We appreciate your support. We love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, you know I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, Emma, it was another good first period, and the Preds then had to come from behind, but yet didn't end up with 2 points. We've heard this story before. This is not a repeat episode, friends. We're going to recap the overtime Edmonton loss, including our one word to describe the game. We're going to look ahead to tonight's second game in a back-to-back against Calgary, and got a real quick game of takes from a hat for this fun Friday. Before we dive into all of that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Yeah, Emma, I know this is going to sound like a repeat episode because I swear we've been here before where we recap a game where Nashville goes up early and has a great first period and then takes their foot off the gas in the second and then has to come from behind and then loses it 3-2 in overtime. Feels like we've done this before.
And you actually, that I think segues nicely into our one words for the game, which for me, once again, is 2 words because I'm a maverick and I don't play by the rules.
Let's go.
My 2 words, Groundhog Day. Like, we have been here before. We not just gone through this? It was the exact same thing, looked really solid. I would say the beginning of the first period was all Scott Wedgewood, and we'll get to that.
Oh my gosh, we are going to talk about Scott Wedgewood, y'all.
And we'll get to that. But like once Nashville scored, they scored the first goal for the 3rd game in a row, went up early, and once they did that, they were buzzing the rest of that period. They looked really, really good. And I remember as they went into first intermission, I thought, okay, now let's see if they can, not do what they did last time. And then they did what they did last time. Exactly the same thing that happened against Colorado. They came out in the second period looking slow. They looked like they were playing on their heels. They completely let Edmonton dictate the pace. What happens? They score twice, first to tie it, then to take the lead. And then we come back, 3rd period. This time they made us sweat it a little bit. But a bottom 6 guy, Cole Smith, comes, scores the tying goal, sends it to overtime, and then they lose in overtime.
Wah, wah, wah.
The exact same story.
Yeah. Same story, different Locked On Predators episode, friends. I also have 2 words for my one word, again, because Emma and I make the rules, Emma and I break the rules. Mine is SAT scores. And friends, I'm going to pull back the curtain on my life, one of the biggest disappointments of my life when I talk about my SAT scores. I'm from the North. We do SAT scores. We don't do ACT scores. Did you do ACTs, Emma, or SATs?
I did SATs. I'm also from the North.
Let's go. Yeah, good old-fashioned SATs. So I took them and my senior year, and I got 1080 on the SATs. The college that I was going to offered a great scholarship at 1100. And I had everything else except the 1100. So, ladies and gentlemen, on the Saturday that I graduated high school and spent the morning sitting in a classroom retaking the SATs, and I felt good. I was like, all right, I got 1080 the first time, only need a couple more questions right to get 1100. And the envelope came in the mail as it used to in the olden days. And I was holding it and I actually said out loud, Emma, wouldn't it be so horrible if I got 1090? Y'all, I got 1090.
No.
That is what this Edmonton game felt like. It felt like, okay, the last overtime game. Okay, we got 1080. It's not horrible. We were so close. And then this Edmonton game comes along. Cole Smith scores that come from behind goal. And you think, baby, we are getting the 1100 SAT score scholarship now. No, we didn't. We got 1090.
Yep.
The Nashville Predators scored a 1090 on the SATs last night. It was tough. Of course, we always reach out to our insiders for their one word. We always chat after the game with them. Rebecca said, and I love this one, we went from anticipated toast to tasty yeast roll and almost to a cinnamon roll. Rebecca speaks my language. This one I think is epic. This is from Dustin. I was so proud of Dustin. My one word for tonight's game is nursing home. This was Darnell Nurse's house tonight, and he definitely took care of the Preds. Which, I mean, look, Connor McDavid, he did the thing. He got the goal. He scored his 1,000th point. But then Darnell Nurse, just slow your roll. Yeah, it was a Darnell Nurse show. Tanner said, for the second game in a row, consolation. Yeah. And like we said, Connor McDavid did score his 1,000th point. Emma, did you see the picture on social media of the cake that they had for him in the locker room afterward?
I did.
I'm like, wouldn't it have been funny, y'all, if we did let you score that point? Which I think they felt about as confident about that
as we did. Yeah, but I'm like, well, then what would they do with the cake?
Yeah, they had T-shirts made up. Leon Draisaitl made up T-shirts that had just the dorkiest, bless his heart, picture of Connor McDavid, and they said this guy scored 1,000 NHL points. So they were banking on it, and Connor McDavid cashed in. Another one of our insiders said, "Meh." Outside of Wedgie and the fourth line, the rest of the team was invisible, which brings us to who I think is the surprising star of this game. So, Emma, when you saw Scott Wedgewood was getting the start in Edmonton, how did you feel about that? What did you think?
Well, I was kind of like, okay. Not what we would have expected, with the back-to-back so far this year. Normally we've seen Saros start the first game and then Wedgewood starts the second game. But, the more I thought about it, I was like, well, Saros did get the start the last 2 times against Edmonton. And so maybe we just mix it up a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're going to get a fresh Saros now for Calgary tonight, which probably not the worst thing in the world because Calgary's been having a pretty good start. So I was a little bit like, okay. I was like, let's see how this goes. And I was so impressed with Wedgewood. I mentioned early in the first period, he had to get tested very early and very often in that first period. And I mean, it was all him, the reason that Nashville was able to score first and keep Edmonton off the board, because he had, again, a couple big saves like in the first couple minutes of the period. And even throughout that, yes, gave up the 2 goals in the second. But I think even after that, through the rest of the second period and into the third, he's the reason that game was as close as it was. He came up big in some really key moments. And I think that, even the goals that he did allow in the second period, it's, technically, yes, it's always on the goaltender. Goaltender's got to stop the pucks. I get that. But I think that, that first one that really, or no, not the first one. It was the Darnell Nurse's goal.
Yes.
Oh, really brutal turnover by Jonathan Marchessault there. Kind of led to a 2-on-1 with Jeremy Lauzon against, what was it?
Nurse.
McDavid and
Was it McDavid and
yeah.
McDavid and Nurse?
Anyway,
It was not a good look. Like, we knew.
yeah. So it wasn't great. But again, it's, they kind of hung him out to dry a little bit at key moments in there. But it's, again, with this team, it's like we're seeing them come out strong, or at least be strong at some point in the first period. And then they come out in the second like, oh yeah, we're supposed to play hockey.
There's
And
more. There's
yeah.
more.
I thought we were done.
I thought we were done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wedgewood showed everybody in Nashville with his performance last night why the Predators went out and got him after things didn't work out with Kevin Lankinen. And look, we love Kevin Lankinen here, but that is why they signed Scott Wedgewood. And I know nobody liked his performance in the preseason, and we've talked about that, but this is the Scott Wedgewood that you are going to get. Coming up, we are also going to talk about the fourth line's performance in this game and the first line's performance in this game. Today's episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Look, I love a great deal as much as the next person, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It's got to be easy, no hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile says it's easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I really wondered about it. But it turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process is the time you'll spend on hold waiting to break up with your old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. There, you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. Again, that's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NHL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NHL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NHL. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, Emma. So we talked about Scott Wedgewood's performance last night, which I think should be very reassuring to Nashville Predators fans who have just not gotten on the wedgie train. It's time to get on the wedgie train. But let's talk about that fourth line. This was a line, let's be real. Oh, they have struggled without Kiefer Sherwood this season. And I think there is something to not having Sherwood on that line. They had a lot of chemistry last year. The Predators on October 22nd recalled Zachary Leroux. He has been playing with McCarron and Smith when McCarron has been in the lineup. Last night, the heroes of the game, Michael McCarron got the Preds on the board first with one of those great greasy goals. Cole Smith scored late in the third period to tie it up. What did you think of what we saw from this fourth line that we really haven't been able to be super impressed with yet this season?
Well, I think it's kind of what was expected of that line last year, which is that they kind of drove the pace and set the tone for the rest of the team offensively. I mean, you mentioned that greasy goal by McCarron. It was like, yes, thank you. Get a body in front of the net so that
For
when
the
Roman
love.
when Roman Yossi has that beautiful one-timer from the blue line, there's someone there to just whoop tap it in. Because again, I mentioned this on yesterday's show, Calvin Pickard, lovely person, but can we stop making him look like he's going to win the Vezina? Because he's, he's a guy that I think that the Predators needed to test more than they did. And that starts with having bodies in front of the net.
Yeah.
And it helps when that body is 6'6" Michael McCarron.
Yes.
And I think that, we saw that, and then they just kind of are the energy line. I know they were always the identity line, but they bring energy, and they're not always necessarily counted upon to be to score. I mean, everyone's
Right.
counted upon to score, but they're not the ones you necessarily want driving your offensive production. But just the energy that we saw, and the getting to the hard places, getting in front of the net. I include Zachary Leroux in that too. I think he looked really good
Yes.
last night as well. So I think it was nice to see that line kind of click.
Yeah, I thought that they were great. I love Zachary Leroux's pass up the ice to Cole Smith. You love seeing Zach Leroux getting more and more comfortable in the NHL. And one of the things that I've been impressed with, while he hasn't gotten that goal yet, he also has done a good job of like containing the Leroux-ness that got him into some trouble in the queue and then sometimes in the AHL. But he still plays with a lot of physicality. He has no fear. So I've really been impressed with him. I think that it's coming. And like you said, it's good to see this fourth line breakthrough, because what we didn't see was much from our top players. And if you just straight look at just chances generated, Philip Forsberg only had one shot on goal. Gus Nyquist, one shot on goal. You had Marchessault had two shots. Ryan O'Reilly, none. Stamkos, only one. Like, they weren't really generating a lot of chances. And of course, they are going to draw the most defensive pressure. But these are the players that you have to have going if Nashville wants to get some regulation wins. And that was a little bit concerning to me last night.
Yeah, I mean, look, in an 82 game season, there's always going to be games where you need to rely on your bottom six to, it's going to happen. They're going to be the ones to pull you out. But again, if your top guys aren't going, I mean, of those names that you just listed, I mean, one shot for Philip Forsberg, that's like unheard of for him,
Right.
over this season and last year too. So it's clearly something, was not clicking with those top six players last night. I don't know what it was, but it's good to see, on one hand, you're encouraged because it's like, all right, when the top six guys aren't firing on all cylinders, you can rely on the bottom six. I would include the kid line in there, even though they didn't score. Juuso Parssinen, I thought, looked tremendous last night.
Yes.
Phil Tomasino, Luke Evangelista. That bottom six was really kind of driving the energy last night. And again, it's good to know that you can rely on that in the event that your top six guys are off, but it's not necessarily a recipe for long-term success, I would not think.
Yeah. And look, the Predators really quickly can turn this around because they are on a back-to-back tonight. They are facing off against the Calgary Flames. And this is an interesting Calgary Flames team, Emma. Like, I am still trying to figure out, much like the Nashville Predators, what is going on here. They played a lot of close games. They've gotten wins in a lot of close games, which I think is something that Nashville needs to pay attention to, being a team that has not gotten a lot of wins in close games. And look, can we just take a minute? I know this is not the big story for tonight's game, but hey, we're going to run into our old friend Tyson Barrie, who's on the third defensive pair for the Calgary Flames, y'all. So that'll be great. But when you look at tonight's game against the Flames, Emma, what stands out to you about this matchup?
Well, I think, when it comes to, like you mentioned, the close games, I noticed that as well. And I think that that's where Nashville needs to take advantage of every single advantage they have. That
Mhm.
includes the man advantage. If they are on the power play, they did not score on the power play against Edmonton, which is that to me is a sign of, like, you're not taking advantage of opportunities. Edmonton has one of the worst penalty
Yeah.
kills in the league, and Nashville did not take advantage of that. So I think that, when it's a game of inches, which it's going to be against a team like Calgary, you're going to need to actually capitalize on those advantages whenever you have them.
Yes. And there's a couple of areas, like you mentioned, where Nashville could. You talked about special teams. Calgary, another one of those teams that's not very good. They're at the bottom of the league when it comes to the penalty kill. Another really small advantage is in the face-off circle. Nashville is fourth in face-offs. Calgary, they're not. They're towards the bottom of the league in faceoffs, and on things like the power play, on things like offensive zone draws. You've got to be winning the faceoffs. These little things are going to make such a big difference tonight. When you look at the Calgary game, is there any player that you're like, look, this is somebody who's going to have to step up?
I think I'm going to look at, well, kind of two players. I'm going to go Ryan O'Reilly and
Mm.
Steven Stamkos, because those are two guys who are going to be, who have the ability to be game changers on the power play and in the faceoff circle. And they're two guys who you mentioned we really didn't see step up against Edmonton. And so those are going to be guys that if we can get one or both, God forbid, we get both of them going against Calgary, that would be nice too.
Yeah, I'm watching for Jonathan Marchessault. This is one of those players who literally is doing everything he can to impact the game, and it's just not necessarily resulting in goals or points like he wants them to. But man, Jonathan Marchessault is just putting it all out there, and I would love to see his effort get rewarded. Also, just throwing it out there, will we see Adam Wilsby tonight? I don't know that we will, but just something to keep your eye on. Coming up, we are going to wrap up our conversation about this Calgary game. And then, friends, we have a really quick game of Takes from a Hat. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, and it's all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Emma, we've talked about players that we're watching. What's going to be like the big key for you in tonight's game against Calgary?
Just 60 minutes. I mean, the second period, especially, this team has a second period problem, and I don't know why.
Me
It's like
too.
you say, a play has a third act problem or something. No, this team has a second period problem. I don't know why. I don't know what the issue is, but they need to figure that out, because it's now been 2 games in a row that they have scored first and then come out completely on their heels. It's like, no, you need to score more.
Mhm.
And that, I think that is going to be key. I just want to see the effort and the energy level be sustained through the entire game.
Yes. Mine is very similar. It's drive the play. Be
Mhm.
the team that's in charge and dictating the pace of play and the way that this game goes. And we saw that in the first period again in other games, not in the second, and a struggle to get back to it in the third. So I think you and I are on a very similar page for this. So, of course, on Monday's show, we're going to recap what we see in this Calgary game. And friends, we still have another game over the weekend because on Sunday, oh, Emma, I don't know how we're going to get through this emotionally. We are going to have to watch life coach Kevin Lankinen potentially start in net for the Vancouver Canucks against the Predators. And of course, we'll see Kiefer Sherwood in the wrong jersey as well. It's going to be a whole thing. We're going to be all in our feels on Monday. So be sure you come back for that. But we're not done today, friends, because it is Fun Friday. And that means we pull out the greatest piece of hockey swag, the 10-gallon foam hat. And we're going to reach in here and we are going to do a couple of real quick takes from a hat. Oh, okay. This is an interesting one. We actually sent this one out to our insiders. So we're going to get some of their takes on this one, but we're going to start with you, Emma. If you were Andrew Brunette, what would you say in the locker room ahead of tonight's game? Or what coaching decision would you make ahead of the game?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, we know my coaching decision would be to bench Luke
yeah.
Shen, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I know when I wrote that question, I'm like, I'd bet some money at FanDuel on this.
Yeah, I don't know. I would just say, like, I mean, stay the course, bring the energy. I mean, that sounds very lame and cliche, but I mean, if they play like they did in the latter part of the first period and all of the third period against Edmonton, they have a good shot at winning. They just need to do that for the entire time.
Yeah. So, like I said, we asked our insiders about this specific take. One of our insiders said he needs to go in there and kick a trash can across the room, like the coach from Letterkenny, as this was effing embarrassing from many of the guys. I don't know what Letterkenny is. Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah, it's a show about hockey players. So
Okay.
that tracks.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. Dustin said if he were Andrew Burnett, he would say, can we try playing some defense in overtime? It feels like their offensive aggression is killing them in overtime. Chris said for tonight, Bruno should be shouting, get to the net. I'm sure he is. That's actually mine too. Get to the net. And here's the thing, we talk about these cliches. Cliches are cliches because they're true a lot of the time. And Andrew Brunette is saying the things that we're all screaming at our televisions during the game. We can assure you that these things are being said, just so you know. All right, Emma, here's another one. We're going to do I think we need to do a whole episode on this one next week, but let's just do the Cliff Notes version of this question. Should Nashville trade or try to make a deal for Sidney Crosby?
I saw this from Kevin
Girl.
Weeks saying, yeah, it's a fit. And it's like, okay, by that logic, Sidney Crosby would be a fit on any team because he is a generational player. Who wouldn't want him on their team?
No.
But I'm gonna go with no.
Okay.
Because first of all, I mean, just logistics. He's not going anywhere. He's going to stay in Pittsburgh. He's going to
Yes.
retire in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But even that aside, I think that in some like crazy world, if the Penguins were willing to trade him, I don't think the Predators have enough to offer that. And I think, the Penguins are going to be looking towards a rebuild here soon. Really should be now, but they do still have Crosby, so they can't really fully commit to a rebuild until he retires. But I think that, we've seen this already. It's like, hey, we brought in Marchessault and Stamkos and Shea, and I think we can all agree that those guys haven't totally figured it out yet. So, like, let's maybe not add more like new to this until we kind of figure this out. Yeah, but hey, you know what? I applaud the optimism by Kevin Weeks. I don't know if you call that optimism, but
He's
it's
thinking outside the box, Kevin
certainly
Weeks.
a take. It's certainly a take.
It
Yes.
is. I have strong feelings about this. First of all, correct me if I'm wrong, but their general manager said everybody's on the table except Sidney Crosby. So
Dubas did kind of push back on that a little
did he?
bit, but I think that that's more of a, he's in a spot kind of like Barry Trotz was last year, where it's like, we'll listen to everything. Like,
Yeah.
we'll take the phone call. But I think
Right.
realistically, there are probably a couple, another guy or two who are not on the table.
Yeah. And even though Nashville spent like $108 million this offseason, nothing that they did this offseason in getting those veterans cost them their future. And that is the most important thing to me. Like, I love this, 2 to 3 year window we've opened up, and it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. But what I love about it is that I can enjoy it and not feel like, oh man, all our eggs are in one basket. And if you try to cut a deal for Sidney Crosby, you're going to give up a ton of draft picks. You're going to give up top prospects. And I am not willing to part with them for Sidney Crosby. I'm just not, or for really anybody. I'm just not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
well,
where I
and
stand.
that's what the Penguins are going to be looking for too, is
100%.
draft picks. And they've already got, I mean, they just traded Lars Eller back to Washington for 2 draft picks. They've got some like 10 picks next year, 9 picks the following year. It's like they're kind of doing what Nashville was doing a couple years ago.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's I just don't I don't think, Nashville right now, the way that they're playing, they're not just one piece away. It's like they need to
Right.
figure out what's going on. They need to build this chemistry and keep getting more comfortable with each other before we add in another big piece
Mhm.
like a Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Predators, and even with Barry Trotz and all of his coaching experience, and I think he's done a great job, as a new general manager. I agree with you. There is still a lot more analyzing that has to go on, and a little bit more time before we figure out, okay, what is missing. Yes, of course, we don't have that 1C, and Sidney Crosby is that 1C, but I don't know that that's the solution, and I am not willing to do it if it costs what the Predators have built coming up. So that's where I'm at. But man, Kevin Weeks, look at you taking that pot and you're just stirring it. You're stirring it, man. You got people's bowels in an uproar in Nashville over that. Thank you, Kevin Weeks. We appreciate it. Again, Nashville back at action tonight in Calgary. Let's see if they can get, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, a regulation win for 2 points. And then Sunday in Vancouver. On Monday's show, Emma and I will be back to recap the Calgary and Vancouver game, and to also just think really great thoughts about Kevin Lankinen, future life coach of the Locked On Predators podcast. Before we sign off on this fun Friday episode, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me at Penalty Box Radio. You can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can, of course, follow the podcast on social media, LO_Predators. You can listen on your favorite podcasting platform. And we are here on YouTube as well. That's going to do it for this week's episodes of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back on Monday with all new episodes. We'll see you then.